How many of you have experienced biased judgments due to your race? Racism and hate crimes have always been a problem within the United States. Recent events have shown that we need to spread awareness on the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders movement. Asian Americans are continuing to be attacked and fear for their lives due to society's racist beliefs. It is time that our generation takes a stand and fights for what is right. We have the power to end racism and teach our children equality for all. First, I will talk about some of the recent attacks on Asian Americans. Second, I will go into detail about what the root cause of racism is. And finally, I will talk about the possible solutions to end Asian hate. According to Suzanne Nguyen from NPR.org, she says Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the U.S. reported nearly 3,800 instances of discrimination against Asians in the past year. The actual number could be much higher. One attack was against an elderly woman named Zhao Zhenzi. She was punched in the face by a white man here in San Francisco. She was able to defend herself by smacking her attacker with a board. Shockingly, the attacker is the one who left the scene on a stretcher. Zhao fought back for herself, and she is now donating nearly $1 million to the AAPI movement. In addition, there was also an attack on a 36-year-old Asian man in Chinatown, New York. The man was stabbed in the back with an 8-inch knife. The attacker was charged with second-degree attempted murder as a hate crime. The attacker told the police that he stabbed him because he didn't like the way the victim looked at him. Another attack was a mass shooting at 3 different spas in Atlanta. There were 8 people killed, and 6 of them were Asian American women. What's even worse about this case is that police officers dismissed the attacker of committing a hate crime. The officer even said that this attack was a reaction to a bad day. This killer targeted these poor women who were mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives. There have been many violent and deadly attacks this past year because of anti-Asian hate. There are many others who have lost their lives due to these racist beliefs. Killing or harming somebody because of their race is never okay. Asian Americans should not have to fear for their lives while walking in their own neighborhood, going to work, etc. There are also many different causes of racism. In my opinion, racism is something that is taught. It is the belief that one race is superior to the other. Although I also believe that people can form opinions of their own and disregard racist teachings that they learned as a kid. Racial prejudice began many generations before us. The Civil War freed slaves, however, it did not free America from racist thoughts or actions. Some people say that the cause of racism towards Asian Americans started due to the pandemic that we are currently living in. Apparently, to racists, it makes sense that since the first COVID case was in Wuhan, China, it is every Asian's fault that the world is fighting a virus. During the start of the pandemic, people were commenting racial slurs to Asians, like Kung flu and Chinese flu. People with these horrible beliefs don't realize that racism is also a pandemic that our country is currently suffering from. Another cause of racism towards Asian Americans is having presidents like Donald Trump. The website Columbia Spectator states, due to anti-Asian rhetoric in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, hate crimes rose by 150% in 2020, as leaders like former President Trump blamed the spread of the virus on China. Trump was actually one of the first to call the coronavirus Kung flu. It's funny how the people who are blaming Asians for the pandemic are the same people who refuse to wear masks and social distance. There are many causes of racism in America. The reason that Asian hate has been increasing is because of the coronavirus, and people love to find others to put the blame on. The other reason for the attacks on Asians is because of leaders like Trump, who spread their racial beliefs throughout the country and do nothing to help control the coronavirus that we're living in. Although it is nearly impossible to end racism, there are some actions we can take to help find a solution and support the AAPI movement. One way to help our Asian community is to speak out if you witness a hate crime. We often see all these videos on social media of a hate crime taking place, but nobody intervenes or helps the person who is being attacked. If you feel that it is unsafe to intervene, you should call 911 immediately. This increases the chance of the attacker being prosecuted and taken off the streets. Another step you can take towards finding a solution is to advocate for awareness. Spread awareness at home, school, work, wherever you can. The biggest problem of racism is that nobody speaks up. If we educate people on what is going on with Asian hate, we can hopefully prevent others from having anti-Asian beliefs. Another action we can take that could possibly make a big impact is to reach out to our elected officials. PBS.org says Americans should ask politicians to work toward better ways of understanding and collecting data on hate crimes. There are already some organizations taking place to help Asian communities. Tao's organization has created a petition that requests elected officials to focus on the needs of affected communities, tackle systematic racism, and to address the needs of survivors. Even though we can't abolish racism, we can definitely make a difference and help Asian communities. Remember to speak up if you witness a hate crime and call the police so that we can ensure that the attacker is prosecuted. Lastly, contact elected officials to help to make a difference, sign petitions, and donate to the cause if you are able to. Anything helps. First, I talked about a few of the many attacks on Asian Americans. Second, I talked about the cause of these recent hate crimes. And lastly, I talked about what actions we can take to find a solution on racism and help our fellow Asian community. Now is the time for our generation to fight back against racism and spread awareness on equality for all. We must speak up against racial prejudice and bias in hopes for a better and safer future. If you are somebody who has experienced biased judgments, I hope that we can one day make a difference for you and others. Thank you for listening.